Incident number 1. On March 14, 2018, Daniel R. Cooper began his morning shift at a grain storage facility in rural Iowa, unaware of how quickly routine labor could turn fatal. He had worked at the facility for 6 years and was known for entering the silos to break up compacted corn during blockages. Inside the silo, thousands of tons of dried corn kernels rested in unstable layers, forming hidden air pockets beneath the surface. Daniel entered through the side hatch as conveyor augers continued pulling grain downward toward a transport belt below. At first, the surface felt solid beneath his boots as he slowly made his way toward the blockage. Without warning, the grain beneath him collapsed inward as the auger drew material toward the bottom discharge point. In seconds, Daniel was swallowed to his waist by the flowing corn as suction pulled him deeper into the moving mass. He screamed for help as the grain behaved like liquid, dragging him downward with unstoppable force. Within moments, only his head and shoulders remained visible above the shifting surface. The weight of the corn compressed his chest so tightly that breathing became nearly impossible. Coworkers heard his final muffled cries and rushed to shut down the auger system. By the time the machine stopped, Daniel had already been pulled completely beneath the surface. Rescuers arrived and began drilling and vacuuming grain for hours in a desperate attempt to recover his body. When Daniel was finally recovered, he had suffocated beneath the crushing pressure of over 1,000 pounds of corn. The autopsy confirmed death by mechanical suffocation caused by grain entrapment. Investigators later found that the auger system had been left running during silo entry. The company was fined for failing to enforce critical lockout safety procedures. The silo resumed operations within days, silently swallowing grain as if no life had ever been lost inside it. Incident number 2. On September 22, 2020, Lucas Reinhardt reported for his night shift at a massive shipping warehouse in Hamburg, Germany. The facility relied on high-speed conveyor sorters to move thousands of heavy packages every hour. Lucas was responsible for clearing jams where boxes became wedged between sorting arms. Shortly after midnight, a blockage formed near one of the automated diverter gates. Believing the system was safely paused, Lucas stepped between 2 moving conveyor lanes. Unknown to him, a delayed restart command had already been scheduled in the automated system. Without warning, the diverter arms snapped back to life with mechanical force. One arm struck Lucas across the torso and slammed him against the moving conveyor wall. Before he could regain his footing, the opposing conveyor lane engaged and pulled him sideways. The moving belts crushed him inward, compressing his body between steel rollers. His legs buckled as the synchronized machinery applied uniform crushing pressure. Coworkers nearby heard metallic grinding and rushed toward the sound. By the time they reached the belts and hit the emergency stop, Lucas had already gone silent. His body remained pinned between the rollers, unmoving beneath tons of mechanical pressure. Emergency responders pronounced him dead at the scene from crushing trauma. Investigators later confirmed a software timing fault caused the delayed restart. The warehouse was temporarily shut down for system recalibration and safety review. Within weeks, the conveyors resumed their endless motion, moving packages as if Lucas Reinhardt had never stood between them. Incident number 3. On July 9, 2019, Kenji Nakamura began his afternoon shift at an auto parts factory in Osaka, Japan, assigned to monitor the hydraulic stamping unit. The machine used thousands of pounds of downward pressure to stamp raw steel into precision components. Kenji had performed routine inspections on the unit dozens of times without incident. That evening, a metal sheet misaligned inside the lower chamber and triggered an automatic halt. Believing the emergency lock had fully disengaged the piston, Kenji opened the side access panel. The control system, however, remained partially charged with residual hydraulic pressure. As Kenji reached inside to adjust the metal sheet, the chamber suddenly repressurized. The piston dropped without warning, trapping his upper body inside the steel enclosure. The crushing force pinned him instantly as the machine completed its programmed compression cycle. Nearby workers heard the hydraulic surge but could not see what had occurred inside the enclosure. By the time the emergency stop was activated, the piston had already reached its lowest point. Kenji remained trapped inside the chamber, motionless beneath the full compression force. Emergency responders arrived and dismantled the access frame to release his body. He was pronounced dead at the scene from traumatic compression injuries. Investigators later discovered the hydraulic safety bleed valve had malfunctioned during shutdown. The factory was temporarily closed for emergency safety system upgrades. Kenji Nakamura's death was ruled an industrial accident caused by residual system pressure. Within weeks, the hydraulic press returned to service, stamping steel as quietly as it always had. Incident number 4. On February 3, 2021, Marcus Delaney began his overnight shift at a refrigerated meat warehouse in Toronto, Canada. The facility stored thousands of tons of frozen goods inside industrial cold chambers. Marcus was tasked with inventory checks inside one of the deep storage freezer rooms. The chamber maintained a constant internal temperature far below freezing at all times. Shortly after entering, the automatic door behind him sealed shut as part of its timed cycle. The internal emergency release handle had frozen solid due to prolonged exposure to moisture. Marcus attempted to force the door open, but the insulation seal held firm. His radio battery drained quickly as the cold weakened its internal charge. As minutes passed, the freezing temperature began to numb his hands and feet. His breathing turned shallow as the intense cold drained his physical strength. Outside the chamber, warehouse activity continued uninterrupted throughout the night. Inside, Marcus slid down between stacked pallets as his muscles began to fail. Hours later, a coworker noticed his unattended equipment near the freezer entrance. When the door was finally opened, Marcus was found unresponsive on the frozen concrete floor. Emergency responders attempted resuscitation but pronounced him dead at the scene. The medical report confirmed death due to hypothermia caused by prolonged cold exposure. Inspectors later confirmed the frozen emergency handle had not been serviced for months. The freezer reopened days later, sealing shut again with the same mechanical indifference. Incident number 5. On August 17, 2018, Daniel Roberts began his evening shift at a scrap metal facility in Texas, USA, assigned to oversee the industrial conveyor grinder. The machine was designed to crush large metal debris into smaller recyclable fragments. Throughout the shift, Daniel monitored blockages that occasionally jammed the conveyor intake. That night, a twisted beam became lodged near the grinder's feeding rollers. Believing the system to be safely paused, Daniel stepped onto the conveyor platform for manual removal. A secondary motor, however, remained active in automatic override mode. As Daniel leaned forward to dislodge the beam, the conveyor suddenly restarted. His boot caught in the moving belt surface, pulling his lower body toward the grinder intake. Daniel clawed at the side railing as the machine dragged him closer. Nearby workers heard his screams over the grinding roar of the machinery. The emergency shutoff was reached only after the conveyor had already pulled him into the intake zone. The grinder crushed his body before the internal rollers fully stopped. Rescue crews arrived to find fragmented remains inside the sealed grinding system. Daniel Roberts was pronounced dead at the scene from catastrophic mechanical trauma. The grinder was shut down for investigation, but the conveyor resumed operation weeks later without him. Incident number 6. On November 22, 2020, Lucas Meyer entered the chemical blending facility in Hamburg, Germany, for a scheduled safety valve inspection. The plant processed volatile industrial solvents under sealed pressure systems. Lucas was assigned to inspect a pressure release valve inside a closed mixing chamber. Unbeknownst to him, a hidden microcrack had formed in a nearby chemical feed line. As he opened the chamber access hatch, invisible toxic vapor rapidly filled the air around him. Within seconds, his breathing became sharp as the chemical began to paralyze his lungs. Lucas attempted to retreat, but his legs weakened beneath him. The emergency respirator mounted on the wall malfunctioned due to low pressure. The vapor continued to thicken inside the sealed chamber with no ventilation active. Within minutes, Lucas collapsed onto the steel floor, unable to breathe. Outside the chamber, automated mixing cycles continued without interruption. When coworkers finally noticed the abnormal pressure readings, The chamber was remotely sealed. Emergency teams later forced the hatch open and discovered Lucas unresponsive inside the vapor-filled room. He was pronounced dead from acute chemical inhalation exposure. The plant halted operations for 1 week before resuming chemical production as scheduled.